Hello again, friends. Today we're going to be working on the puzzle called Island Builder in the Arrays chapter of Learn to Code 2. But before we actually get going building this island, and it's not going to take us that long to work through this puzzle. It's just not a very lengthy puzzle. So I thought I'd take this chance to do a little practice with arrays and show you several different ways to create or initialize arrays in Swift. So let's go back out of the puzzle here. So clicking back and come to the main menu page here. And if you don't see this tab down at the bottom, a section called More Playgrounds, you may need to open it up by clicking the See All button or See More or something like that. But what we're looking for here is this Answers template. Okay. So the Answers template is a template that allows us to show particular values. So if you can find that, click on Answers and open up a template of answers. And if you want, you can select it and hit the button twice, and it will let you choose a new title for it. So I'm going to rename this something like Playing with Arrays. Okay. And just hit return when you're done. The name will now change to Playing with Arrays, and we can open it up. And you get a new kind of playground here. We've used this in the past to play around with some Swift ideas. And again, the main thing that it lets us do here is say show, and then in parentheses put something we would like to show. So I'm going to get rid of these lines of code and just show you here. If you don't remember what happens here, over on the right-hand side here, it will print or show whatever string or values we put in the parentheses of the function show here. So we say show what is your name, and what is your name will appear over here. All right. Now this lets us play around with some arrays. So let's go ahead and create some arrays in a few different ways. So I might want to do something like this. Var a collection of numbers, and this is going to be an array of integers. So one way we've seen how to do this is to say colon and give the type of the array that we're doing here, and that would be square bracket enclosing an int. So this is saying we're making an array of integers, and collection of numbers is now declared to be the type array of integers. And if we want to set this equal to an empty array, it's now an empty array. It has no values in it, but it can hold integers. And we could do append. We could say collection of numbers dot append. Let's try that. Collection of numbers dot append. And then, of course, we could append an int in here. So let's append the value 17. And if we'd like to, at this point, we could say show collection of numbers dot count, right? And count will show us the number of values that are in this array. So if I click run here, it should say 1. And there's one value in collection of numbers, and that number is 17. The other thing you can do here, of course, is click on this little box here, and that will show you the contents of the array. And in this case, it has just one element in here, and it's an integer, 17. Okay. Now, I wanted to show you a couple other ways to create arrays. So let's take a look at another way to do this here. I'm going to do it up here. This is where I'm going to be declaring my arrays. So let's say var another collection of numbers. And this time I'm not going to give its type, but instead I'm going to use what we've done in the past in Swift, is we use the inference mechanism of Swift to let another collection of values infer what type it is. So I could do this by saying, well, I want to create a collection or an array of integers, and to do that I do open parenthesis, close parenthesis, and that says create a new instance of an array of integers. So since what we're doing here is creating an instance of array of integers and assigning that to another collection of numbers, Swift infers and says, well, this must be an array of integers because you're assigning, the very first thing you're doing here with another collection of numbers is assigning a new instance of integers. So this, if we right-click on here or hold down your finger on that, you can get you should be able to, maybe we need to run it first, and then we'll be able to see get a little help button on here. But before we run it, let's go ahead and do the count of this. So let's say show another collection of numbers dot count, and since we just created it, it shouldn't have anything in it, so its count should be 0, and there it is, it popped up to be 0. Okay, now let's hold our right click over here, and we get the little help button, and we can say, what is this? Well, another collection of numbers is an array of integers. Okay, so there's two ways to create an array of integers. In fact, let's look at, there's even another way to do this. Let's try this. Let's say var yet another collection of numbers. And in this case, let's do the same thing we did before. Let's say int, and let's say open parentheses, but don't put the close parentheses in here. And we have some options down here at the bottom for initializing an array of integers. And if I scroll over, I find this one that says repeating some value with a count of some value. So I'm going to try that one here. And what this lets us do is say we would like to initialize, instead of making this array of ints be empty at the beginning, let's give it some number of values. That's the count. So let's give this 7 elements. And we can repeat a certain element in here. We're going to be initializing, let's put the value 3, because it has to be an integer. So this is going to, each element in here will be the element 3, and it will be repeated 7 times. So if I go ahead and run this here, I'm going to get a little, this little box here. It'll show we should have 7 values or 7 elements in the array, and they should all be set to 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is a nice, fast way. If you know you want an array with, say, 10 elements in it, and you want the values to all be 42, then you can go ahead and use this and just in one line create that. You don't have to do any appending or anything. You can just initialize a new collection or array of integers with the value 42 in there, and there'll be 10 elements of that. All right, so I'm not going to use that a real lot, but there's sometimes when that would be convenient. Okay, let's do some more practice here. Let's go ahead and create a string array, same way. Let's say var string array equals an array of strings, and then we're going to make a new one here, and we're going to choose that repeating business again. Here we go. And the string that we want to put in each element, let's say, is Chris. Okay, so now instead of repeating an integer, we're repeating a string, because this is a string array. And how many times do we want to do that? Oh, let's say 9. So this will give us an array. Let's go ahead and say show the count of this. Show string array dot count. Okay, and let's run this. We should get a count of 9. We do. And if we want to look at the contents of string array, we can look inside here, and they're all set to the string Chris, all 9 elements. All right, good. Now, what if we want to print the values in here ourselves? Well, that's going to require a for loop. So we can do this a few different ways as well, just as a reminder. We can say for some index equals, so for some index in the range 0 up to the length of the string array dot length, then we want to show the value. Well, let's do two things. Let's show the index. So we'll say index, and then we can use string interpolation to just put the value of index in the print statement, in the show statement. So we're going to say show index, and we also want to, let's just put in some dots here. Well, let's also put in the value. So the value then is going to be string array at element index. All right, index. So there we go. Oops, that's too many. Okay, so what is this doing here? This is saying let's make some for loop that has a variable called index that's going to start at 0 and go up to string array.length. And we remember that string array.length is 9. So this is going to start at 0 and go up to 9. And that's not going to be quite right because that's too many for string array. That would actually be 10 values, and there are only 9 values in here. So we really only have indices that start at 0 and go up to, but not including 9. So we really only have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We don't have an index 9 in here. So we could solve this two ways. We can either put in here a -1, which will go up to string array.length -1, or we can also do this another way by saying we want to go up to but not including string array.length by doing this, replacing the last dot with a less than sign that says for index go up to, from 0 up to but not including string array.length, like that. Okay. Let's see what this error is complaining about here. Has no member. Oh, it's not length, it's count. Sorry about that. String array.count. That's better. Okay, so let's try this. This should print out the index and the value string array at that index for this whole time, for this whole array. There we go. Index 0, index 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the value is crisp for all of these. So this is a nice way to print things out here, but I want to show you another way we can do this, maybe. Let's say for I in, and if I don't want to use this, this is called an integer range, a range of integers. It starts at 0 and goes up to but not including 8. There's another way to get this integer range. We can say string array.indices. Okay, string array.indices. Look for help on indices. It says it's a range of integers. And that range of integers gets automatically set to whatever the indices are valid for string array at this point. Okay, so it's creating something that's exactly like this, which is an array of indices as well. All right, so this is doing exactly the same thing, but in a slightly more convenient format. So we can go ahead and put this, copy and paste this right in here, and we'll get the same kind of thing, except we don't want to use index in here. We've changed this to be I. So let's go ahead and make a divider in here. We'll say show. I'll create just a divider so we can see where the next one starts. All right, nice. So we get the same type of thing in here, but in a more convenient way to print out the arrays. Now, what would happen if we actually just tried to say show the array here? If I say show and I say string array, I'm not sure what's going to happen here, but yeah, I think show doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know how to print or show an array of strings. So we can solve that by creating our own function up here at the top. Let's create our own function, func We can call it show as well. Show, and what it's going to take here is an array, and the type of this array is going to be an array of strings. Okay, what's it going to do with this? Well, we're going to do exactly what we do in here. So I'm going to copy this and paste it in here. And now we have a function show, which is going to print out a dividing line. It's going to make a for loop that goes from through all the indices of the array that we're passing in. And it's going to show the index, and it's going to show the value of each element inside their array at I. Okay, so now we can just in one line, instead of having this for loop everywhere, let's get rid of this in here, and we can just say show string array, like that. Okay, in fact, I'm going to get rid of this one. Well, we'll just comment this one out, because you may want to, we're going to keep this document around, and you may want to see how the other way you can make a for loop for printing arrays here. So show, this is not quite right. Let's look and see. If we say show down here, we should get, yep, right in here, we'll say we can give it our array, and our array is string array. All right, so let's try this. There we go. So instead, now we're calling this function we made up here, show, passing in an array of strings, and it goes ahead and does the show for us. So that's nice and useful. You could also make a function show that takes an array of ints and does the same thing if you wanted to. That would allow us to print the values of collections of numbers, or another collection of numbers, or yet another collection of numbers if we wanted. Okay, one other thing here I wanted to show you. We have seen how you can append using .append to an array. We've seen how you can remove an index, remove a value at a certain index, and we've seen how you can insert a new value at a certain index. But let's take a look and see if there's any other things strings can do that we haven't found yet. So we'll say string array dot, okay, here's our append, the new element string. Let's scroll over here, and we can see, let's see if we see remove. That'll be, there's remove all, there's remove at an index, remove all. And we should have seen insert as well. Find that one. Oh, because I need to get rid of this. Remove dot. Let's see. Insert is right here. There's insert new element, some string at an index that's an integer. One thing we haven't seen yet, though, I saw this going by here, is replace. So that's interesting. How does replace work? Replace looks pretty complicated, but let's try it. So replace a subrange, and this takes a range of ints. Okay, so what if we try putting a range of ints in here? Something like 3 up to and including 4. So that's like a range of two values, integer index 3 and 4. With a collection, and a collection is just another array. So we could maybe replace indexes 3 and 4 with a new array. Let's try putting in Pam, comma, we're making an index of strings, sorry, an array of strings. So we've got 2 elements in here, Pam and John, in this collection of strings, and we're saying replace those at index 3 and 4 with these 2. So hopefully we're going to end up with string array having its elements at index 3 and 4 being replaced with Pam and John instead of Chris and Chris here. So let's try printing this out after we're done here. Array, string array, and we'll see if the next time we print it out after this time, if it has its 3 and its 4 values replaced, Chris and Chris replaced with Pam and John. So here's before we do the replace, and yep, there's after the replace. So if you ever need to replace part of an array, we could have done, index 3, 4, 5, and 6 with an array of 4 values, and that would replace those 4 values. So this is a kind of a nice little handy function as well. So we'll add that one to our collection of append, insert, remove, and now replace subrange. It's kind of tricky to use, but very powerful. So, okay, that's it here. Let's move over to the puzzle now. Okay, I've got the puzzle open here, and again, this puzzle is called Island Builder, and it sets up a very big grid for us here. And it says our goal is to build an island surrounded by a sea. So it says the first thing we're going to do is create 2 empty arrays that each store an array of coordinates. One will store coordinates for the island, and the other will store coordinates for the sea. Okay, well, we can do that. Let's come down here, and I noticed that this has the same opening line of code as our last puzzle did, which it sets up an array called all coordinates, which has all the coordinates on this grid in here. So if I look at this and I say help, it will say this is an array of coordinates in here. In fact, it has all the coordinates in here. But we want to create 2 new empty arrays of type coordinate. So let's go ahead and do that. And we need to make these vars, I think, because while this one is a constant and will not need to be changed, we are going to need to append some values to these 2 arrays, so they need to be vars. So one of these arrays will hold a collection of land coordinates, so let's do that. Let's say land coordinates. And land coordinates, let's do one each way here. We just learned in this a couple different ways to create this. So this is going to be an array of coordinates like this, and we can assign it to be empty to start with. And we also learned another way to do this. So these will be ocean coordinates, and we don't need to give it a type if we right away assign it to an instance of array of coordinates. So coordinate, and let's create an instance of it like this that's empty. Okay, so those are the 2 different ways we learned in the previous bit of this video on how to create an empty array of coordinates. You can choose either way you like, or mix them up like we did here if you want to have some fun. Okay, so there's our 2 empty arrays of type coordinates. Let's come back up to the top here. Next it says, write a set of conditions within your if statement to append coordinates to your island array. So that's going to be our land coordinates. So we want to append some coordinates to our land array. These coordinates should be at the center of the map and might be a 3x3 or a 4x4 block. They don't really care how big we make our island, apparently, just that we make an island. Append any coordinates that don't meet these conditions to your sea array. So those will go in our ocean coordinates. So we're going to load up some values into our land coordinates that will correspond to our land points, some area in here. And we're going to load up the rest of the coordinates that don't go in the land into our ocean values over in here. So here's our for loop that starts, it's going to go through all the coordinates in our array, and we have an if condition here, and this one is going to check and see if we are at a land point. So I'm going to add a comment in here first, land point, okay, and the else will be ocean point, okay, because we're going to append to the island array in here. So what's the condition that will make it a land point? Well, these coordinates are, we've got a certain set of rows and columns in here, and they go up to it looks like there are 12 rows and 12 columns. Maybe I want to make mine start like maybe in here or something like this, and maybe we'll make it be a 3 by 3 set of coordinates. So that means that our row is going to be greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 5, and our column is going to be greater than or equal to 3 or less than or equal to 5. Okay, see, I'm just clicking on these values to see that I want rows and coordinates to be greater than or equal to 3 or less than or equal to 5. So let's go ahead, and this is going to be a complicated condition. So let's start with some parentheses here and say the coordinate is the value we're looking at. So we can say if the coordinates dot row is greater than or equal to 3 and the coordinates dot row is less than or equal to 5, that takes care of the rows, right? But we're going to want to add conditions for the columns as well. So we're going to combine these together in a big AND statement. Come down here and say also the coordinates dot column is less than or equal to 3 and the coordinates dot column is less than or equal to, and I'm messing this up here, I realize, 5. Okay, we want our rows to be greater than or equal to 3 and row less than or equal to 5. So I need to change that to be greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 5. And we want our columns to be greater than or equal to 3 and coordinates, the columns to be less than or equal to 5. What are we going to do in this case? Well, we're going to append it to our land coordinates. So we'll say land coordinates dot append. The new element is going to be the coordinate we were just looking at. So there we go. Then it's a land point. Otherwise, it's a sea point, ocean coordinates dot append. The new element is going to be coordinate. Okay. So there we go. Let's go ahead and run this, see what the error is griping about here. Okay, I think what it's griping about is that I didn't have the right spacing in here. So now we've got, that made the error go away. So if coordinate.row is greater than or equal to 3 and the row is less than or equal to 5, and the column is greater than or equal to 3 and the column is less than or equal to 5, then we want to say it's a land point and we'll add that particular coordinate to our land coordinates. If it's not inside that particular set of things, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, inside this box, then we're going to add that point. If it's one of these coordinates outside of that, we're going to add that to our ocean coordinates array. Okay, now coming up here, it says, after we've appended the coordinates to each array, place blocks for each coordinate in the island array and water for the coordinates in the sea array. Good luck. Okay, so down in here, let's place blocks for all the elements in our land coordinates. So for coordinate in land coordinates, then we want to say world.place a block here. World.place a block at the coordinate chord, like that. Okay, and let's do the same thing for the ocean coordinates. So for ocean coordinate in the ocean coordinates, then we want to say world.place the item, which is going to be water, an instance of water at ocean chord there. Okay. Now you need to be careful. Up here it says there's a special way you have to add water. And the way you add water is just like we did here, but first you need to remove the blocks that are there, or the water will be inside of the block and won't show up. So let's go ahead and do that before we add the water. Let's say world.remove all blocks at the coordinate ocean coordinate, like that. Okay? Okay, that looks like it might do it. I'm going to run this faster just to see if it works here. So nice, it placed some blocks here in our 3x3 island points, and it looks to be going through the ocean points now and removing all the blocks first and then placing water at those points. So that looks good. While this finishes up, I'm just going to review what we did here. We created a couple of new arrays, and each array holds coordinates. We did it in two different ways. First one, we explicitly gave it the type and said it's an array of coordinates, but then we set it to be an empty array of coordinates. The next one, we created an instance of a coordinate array here that's empty, and we assigned it to ocean coordinates, and then ocean coordinates, or Swift, inferred the type and said, well, this must be an array of coordinates because they gave me an array of coordinates after creating it. So then we went a for loop, and we looped through all the coordinates in the grid, and we checked the rows and columns of each one, and if the rows and columns were in the threshold that we decided was going to be our island, which is greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 5 for both the rows and the columns, then we appended that particular coordinate object into land coordinates. Otherwise, we appended that coordinate object into our array ocean coordinates. So at the end, land coordinates probably has a count of 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different coordinates, and ocean coordinates will have 144 12 by 12 minus 9 values in it. Okay, and then the last part of this is simply looping through each of the array's land coordinates and placing a block at each land coordinate, all 9 of them, and then looping through all our ocean coordinates and removing the blocks at each ocean coordinate and then placing water at that coordinate. So pretty cool. I want to play around here. If you've got time, let's play around with this and see if we can make a fancy little diagram here. I'm going to get rid of everything in here. And what I'd like to do is maybe make a checkerboard pattern of land and ocean in here. So I think one way to do this would be to sort of look at the coordinate value and say if it's even or odd, then we'll place, if it's even, we'll maybe place a block there, and if it's odd, we'll place water there. Okay, so do something like that. And since we want to look at both the row and the column, let's add them together. Okay, so let's do something like this. Let's say let an index equal the coordinates dot row plus the coordinates dot column. Okay, so all I'm doing here is for any particular value, like right here, I'm adding the row value and the column value. So in this case, that would be 4. In this case, it would be 5. In this case, it would be 6. In this case, it would be 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whoops, 11. Okay, that's 13, that's 16, and so on. So we're going to add the row and the column together, and then we're going to check if that value, that integer, is even or odd. So we'll say if index, if the remainder of index divided by 2 is equal to 0, that means it's an even number. Then we said we want to put it in the block, put it in the land, right? So we'll say land coordinates dot append coordinate. Okay. Otherwise, if it's odd, we'll say else. We'll put it in the ocean coordinates dot append coordinate. Okay, so there. Now we looked and said if the value of adding the index, the row and the column of a coordinate is even, we're going to say it's a land. If it's odd, it's going to be an ocean. All right, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's give it a try. Then the rest of this should work fine because it's just going through all the land coordinates, of which there should be about half of them. And then it's going through the ocean coordinates and giving them water, of which there should be about half of those as well. So let's take a look here. Okay, it's doing the land points, which looks great. It's looking like a checkerboard pattern. Now I just need to make sure the ocean values also go through and do it correctly, which they should. Yeah, there we go. Nice. Might have been better to go ahead and remove the blocks here as well. So I'm going to take this here and put this up in here. This might be a better looking puzzle, but let's try this. So we're going to remove the blocks right before we do the land ones as well. So they won't be too high, two blocks high now. They'll be just one block high. Let's try that. It'll be a little prettier. Okay, it's going through and it's removing them and then adding them, which is fine. So we could even simplify this a little bit more. I'll run this fastest. Okay, now when it comes and does the ocean ones, yeah, that's better. We're not getting it 2 blocks high now, they're just 1 high. Cool. All right, so that was fun. Learned a lot today. We learned several different ways to create arrays. One is by giving it a type explicitly, right here, colon, array of coordinates, and then setting it to be empty. One is by creating a new instance of an array of coordinates and assigning that and letting Swift infer the type. And the third way was using that repeating count constructor or initializer, where we said something like, a var space coordinates equals an array of coordinate created by, if we wrote our own initializer, we could, but it would look something like this, repeating with something and then a count with something else. So repeating, like that. So that was the third way we learned to create an instance of arrays. All right, hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll see you next time.